Being a dad isn't always easy, but it's the best thing I ever did. I'm constantly improving myself to be the best dad I can be through fitness, nutrition, mindset, and lifestyle. As fathers, we pass on many things to our children, such as our mindset, our habits, our attitude, and what we've learned along the way. Each of these will shape who our children are and who they will become. The Warrior Dad's mission is to help you become the healthiest version of yourself, to hone your edge, and to live with purpose. My name is Jim Bertamy, and this is the Warrior Dads Podcast. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in for another episode of the Warrior Dads Podcast. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Josh Gansky. Josh is actually a local guy to me here in King of Prussia, and I got linked up with Josh through a mutual friend, and he is the co-owner of centerforselfcare.com, and he's going to tell you a little bit about that. So I'm going to do a brief interview for Josh, and then we're going to get right into it. We're going to be talking about mindfulness today, so this is a really, really great conversation. I think you guys are going to get a lot out of this. So Josh believes when we take care of ourselves, we can be at our best, have our most balance in our lives, and be more present for people in our lives, for the people in our lives. Josh is a middle school counselor. He has worked at both the middle school and high school levels. He received his mindfulness training and supervision through Thomas Jefferson University's Hospital Mindfulness Institute. Josh, thanks so much for coming on the show, man.
Jim, thank you for having me today. It's an honor. It's a pleasure. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm glad we could finally link up and have the time to do this. So, and today's not an easy day with the kids being out of school and all for voting day. So this was great. So Josh, tell everyone a little bit about centerforselfcare.com and how that came to be.
Sure. So I guess just to begin, I think it's important for me just to maybe share a little bit about why I got into mindfulness, and then kind of what got me to, I think, kind of the business and just kind of our focus. So, at the time, I was feeling really stressed and, pulled in a million different directions, constantly on the go, and, just this doing. And, really trying to balance, work, family, wife, 2 kids. And I honestly was driving around, I would say, every weekend with like a pit in my stomach, and was definitely, having a lot of angst and stress and worry and just kind of, I would say I'd go far to say like I wasn't enjoying life. And
And how long ago was this?
This was about 6-7 years ago.
Okay.
And a mentor of mine from grad school, I knew she had been doing a lot of work in mindfulness. I'd met with her, and she had said to me, Josh, you should really consider, taking a class. And she recommended this class. It's called Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction. And it's an 8-week program. I did my class out of Thomas Jefferson. They offer this class at other, universities and places in the area. And, what I can say is that, I took the 8-week class, and, it changed my life. It really it made a huge difference for me. And the thing is, I can honestly say, like, I enjoy life more. Listen, I still experience stress, and I still experience struggle. And I think one of the biggest lessons for me is that, guess what? You're going to experience those things. It's for me, it's really been about kind of like learning to work with it, paying attention more, being more aware, noticing, the joy and being grateful in my life. And I think the other part is just, this idea of like, being kind and compassionate to ourselves, and, kind of cutting ourselves a little slack. And, for me, it's made a huge difference. And I think it's important for me to say this too. Mindfulness is only, it's one way, and it's not the only way. And, for me, the biggest kind of message, that comes out of the work I do is that no matter what your way is, it's important that you take care of yourself. And, what I found for myself was that, I really needed a support group. I needed, people that were going through the same things as me, kind of same struggles, same stressors, kind of same, joys and happy things as well. And I needed a group. And I realized for me, I needed a group of guys. And, what I did is, I found a group of men to begin with. They were dads, husbands, working, kind of going through the same stuff. And, we created this group together, and I still meet with these guys. And, what it's become is it's become a really huge support group. And I think, for me and the other men is like, you feel like you're not alone. You feel like you're heard. You feel like you're part of something and connected with something, bigger than yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So, from all this work, I was doing a lot of work on my own in terms of business and trying to, teach mindfulness and, get people to come in and focus on their own care. And, I had met this guy, his name's Mark Balser. He's my business partner. And he'd been doing a lot of work with, men and self-care and mindfulness. And, we came together and, kind of talked things out and said, we really want to create, supports and, kind of classes and workshops and retreats and seminars. And listen, our stuff's, available for everybody. But, a real focus of ours is, and I think a big part of it is we live it. We live this life of, being a man and a dad and a husband and caregiver and, just balancing it all. We really thought, for us, there was a need, and we really felt there was a need for others too, to kind of have a place that they could come together, be heard. It was safe. You could show some vulnerability and just feel supported and cared for.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it morphed into, what it is.
And so for anybody listening, try to sum up what mindfulness is, or elaborate a little bit more on mindfulness, because I feel like that could be a little bit
Sure.
misconstrued. And I just want people to really understand what part of mindfulness you're talking about and the capacity, and basically how you used it in your life to go from being stressed out and, as you said, not enjoying life, and then going through this workshop and, having it completely, transform yourself. Not again, like not that you're not working on it constantly, right? But it's
Sure.
just, it showed you the way. And so maybe you can clear that up for some of the people listening.
Sure. So, the definition, that a lot of people use is this: it's, paying attention on purpose in the present moment without judgment. So the idea is that, you're paying attention to everything on the outside, things that are happening around us, and you're also paying attention to what's happening on the inside. And when we talk about in mindfulness paying attention to the inside, we're talking about paying attention to, not just thoughts, which I think a lot of time that's where our attention is, but we're also paying attention to emotions, and we're also paying attention to sensations in the body. And the idea here is that, essentially we're allowing ourselves to be human beings and allowing ourselves to experience everything. I think sometimes we have a tendency to want to maybe avoid or not paying attention to certain things or avert them or push them away. And I think we all know as kind of human beings that, when we do that, things don't just go away. So,
Mm-hmm.
so the idea is that, we really just allow ourselves to experience whatever's happening moment to moment without necessarily grasping onto kind of everything that happens. And listen, we grasp onto things at times. And the idea is that through this awareness, we really start to pay attention to our habits, our patterns, our stressors, kind of the way we think about things. And by really paying attention to what's happening, it can give us some space to really see what's here. And then the other part is, I think, with just this idea of giving ourselves space, it allows us to respond in, I would say, healthy ways or healthier ways for ourselves and the people around us, to be maybe a little less reactive to kind of what's happening. And I think the other part of it too is just this idea of, our attitude, how we go into our experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Because oftentimes, we can tend to be judgmental or closed off, or unforgiving, or self-critical. And the idea with mindfulness is that, we can be aware of these things. They don't define us. We often think that's who we are as a person. But the reality is these emotions, these thoughts, these sensations, they're moment to moment experiences. As human beings and as adults, I think we know that, things aren't permanent. Sometimes we get stuck and caught up in those things, thinking that these things aren't going to end. But if we really truly pay attention, even in the most unpleasant of times, there are, happy and joyful and beautiful things happening around us, throughout. So that's kind of maybe a short, maybe long summary of kind of what mindfulness is and kind of the way I look at it and define it.
No, it's great. I think that's awesome. I mean, and then, one of the things you just mentioned right there at the end is just finding something that it sounds like, at least, so finding something you can be grateful for, right? In a time of unpleasantry.
Sure. I mean, I think, sometimes when we go through, say, unpleasant things, we can get really stuck, and it's almost like Velcro. And I think, if we really are paying attention, you know, there are joyful things that are happening around us, even just someone saying hello to us, or, a loved one being there. And I think that's where a lot of the gratitude comes in, and is a big piece of mindfulness.
Hmm. Sounds like there's also like a really underlying piece of, being present,
Yes.
right? And not
Yep.
taking things for granted. Because, someone says something, nice to you about, whatever, the shirt that you're wearing, or, the tie that you have on, or the shoes that you're, something like that. We could just kind of blow those things off, but not really understand that someone's actually giving us a compliment and maybe trying to connect with us, things like that. And then, going back into that mindfulness instead of just blowing it off or being like, okay, thanks, or, something like that.
Yeah. And I think kind of, being aware of kind of what you do with that, right? When someone says something like that, right? Those small little things, if we're not paying attention, if we're not aware, we might not recognize it. We might not notice it. So yes, this idea of kind of being present for all of it. That's what it means to be a human being. We experience everything, and we can miss out on a lot if we're avoiding things, or
Hmm.
we're not really kind of present for what's right there. And it's I feel like I have to bring it up. I mean, like our the phone. It's a big distraction, and often I notice just people just not paying attention to one another, not those little things, the hello, the smile, right, the eye contact, that it's the little things that really, I think, make the difference. um
Yeah.
and I think it takes some real awareness to say, as simple as it can be, to put the phone down, or just to be present for your children in the house, or your wife, or your partner, whatever it may be. I just it's those small acts that I think really make a difference.
Yeah. So what do you see that there's any kind of common denominator with these? You're saying that you have these groups, and you guys are able to be vulnerable with each other, and just kind of open up and share things. Is there any kind of common denominator of what men, maybe specifically dads, need to work on the most, or things that they are sharing that come up consistently over and over again, that you're kind of having to coach them into, or uh, bring them back into that mindfulness?
I, I think two of the things that stand out is just kind of the balancing of everything. Um, you know, the job, the family, the whatever their significant other, kids, and then kind of making themselves a priority as well. I think that's a common theme, and I think the other thing is just kind of the judgment and the criticism and like the guilt, um, that can come from just I think just being a dad, whether it's with their kids, with the significant other, or just making time for themselves.
You mentioned guilt. What kind of guilt? Because I've actually talked to some other people about that as well. And actually, you and I did talk a little bit about
Yeah,
this offline before, but I've had this conversation with other people. So, what what kind of guilt are you hearing in these kind of scenarios?
I think just kind of go along with what I was just saying. I think there's guilt about just kind of taking time for themselves, making
Themselves. Okay.
time, making time for you know for me. I think I think that there can be guilt, and I would connect, the judgment and criticism when um, there's a lot of kind of reactivity that can happen, like overreacting to a child or, a spouse, that kind of thing. And I think just, time, spending time with their loved ones. I
Yeah.
think that's another area too. And yeah, just the idea of like, and I think the other thing too is sometimes a need for perfection.
Okay.
Uh, to be, you have to be everything to everybody. Which, if you, I think we all know when we kind of set that expectation, it's you're kind of setting yourself up for failure because there's no such thing as perfection. And I think that I think some of the some of the dads and men that we've worked with, there's like kind of this need to be perfect, and not make mistakes and not mess up, which
In all areas of their life, like in the business life and in the family life, both areas.
I would say all the above. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Whether it's at work, right, or with kids, or with their wife or partner, whoever it is. Yeah, definitely. I think there's a pressure.
Yeah. And you're right, it's put on by us, right? Because if someone's striving for perfection, they're setting themselves up for failure already,
Yep.
right? So you have to be realistic, and that's one of the biggest things in setting goals is just, being realistic about the goals and not, you can have a stretch goal, right? And something that would be really, really great if you achieved it. But let's say, you're trying to run a marathon and you've never run a marathon before and you haven't worked out in 2 years. And you're like, well, there's this marathon next month that I really like to do. Or even 3 months down the road, it's like that might not be attainable depending on what your level of physical activity is like, or, what your conditioning is like. So, yeah, you definitely have to set realistic goals. So you said making themselves a priority. Do you think a lot of guys want to make themselves more of a priority, or are they just so focused on doing things for other people, like you said, like trying to be perfect for so many other people in so many other areas of their life? Do you think that people actually even try to focus in on themselves and they're like, well, I really want to make myself a priority, but I just don't know how to do it? Or do you think it's not even entering their mind? And then like once they actually sit down and talk about it, they're like, yeah, I'd like to do more things. Like they almost have the epiphany after the fact. Or do you think that they're actually trying to do it, but then just can't figure out a way to do it?
I mean, I can speak for myself, right? I mean, I want to take care of myself, and sometimes I'm better at it than other times.
Hmm.
And uh, I think I do believe that I believe they want to. I believe they want to take care of themselves. I think we get stuck, and it can be really hard at times to, especially when we kind of get in that habit of like, I've got to take care of, I got to take care of the job and I got to take care of the family. And, I'm not going to have enough time for me. I think what happens is it goes by the wayside. And, but I do believe that, people, I believe they want to, I do. And I feel like, that's one of the hardest things is, making the time. And kind of, but I feel like, once someone comes into, say, one of our classes or workshops, like they walk out of there, they're glad they came, because it was for them.
Hmm.
And here's the other part too. Guess what? Even by coming, you could still have the guilt, and you can still have that, the criticism. And what I'd say is that's okay, because guess what? We experience everything. So, I think sometimes what holds us back is like we get caught up in that guilt, that criticism, the judgment, and then it holds us back from moving forward to say, whether it's working out or eating right or coming to a mindfulness program.
Hmm.
Um, and I think what I would say is that stuff's normal. We're going to experience it. We're going to feel it. But I think sometimes it's like quicksand and we get stuck in it.
Because that would actually make sense, because it's not falling into, because if you're experiencing guilt, if you're experiencing judgment, if you're not feeling the best about yourself, it almost, especially for these people that are trying to set the standard as to being perfect, you're not living in accordance with that perfectness, right? You're not perfect, obviously, if you're experiencing those things. So I'm wondering if they're getting down on themselves a little bit more because they probably feel like, well, this is my wake up call that I'm really not perfect and I'm not really cool with that. And this isn't really what I'm trying to achieve for myself, even though it might not be realistic. But then it's like, it's just a reminder that, oh, well, obviously I'm not perfect and I'm experiencing these things. But it's great to have someone like you say, like, no, that's okay, because we're all going to experience these things. Just how are we going to handle them? What are we going to do after we do experience them? Are we just going to let them, you know, pull us down, like you're saying, like the quicksand? Are we going to let them, pull us down further into the quicksand, or are we just going to, figure out how to climb out of them and just keep moving forward?
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. And, I think often, again, with this idea of expectations, and I would add, outcomes, you know, I think we can get really stuck in that. Especially, when we're doing some comparing as well. Well, I used to be really fit, or I used to take really good care of myself. And,
Mm-hmm.
and then now
Back in the
I'm not.
college days or in my 20s or
Yeah,
something like that, right?
exactly. And then, and I think here's the other part too, listen, it's good to have goals, right? And it's good to have outcome. I think that it's important to remember too, it's the learn the most.
Yeah.
That's the moment to moment awareness. Um, because listen, if we keep attaching ourselves to the outcome, which, whether it's, perfection, or, I've got to lose 30 pounds, or, I've got to be this way, if we keep focusing on that the whole time, that can cause us to get stuck,
Mm-hmm.
especially when things don't work out the way that we might have wanted them to go. So the idea is, like, we got to pay attention to each moment. We have
Yeah.
to pay attention along the way, because that's where we're going to grow, and that's where we're going to really learn the most about ourselves. And like you said, that's how we're going to kind of pull ourselves out of that hole or that quicksand,
Right.
by focusing on that.
And that's really where a lot of the interaction is, right? I mean, if you're talking about just focusing on the end, that's really interesting that you say that, because then you hear different sayings. One of my one of my wife's favorite movies is Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and of course, one of the famous quotes from that is, "If you don't stop and look around every now and then, you're going to miss it."
Yep.
Right? And that's just so true. It's basically sums up exactly what you were just saying right there. Because if you're only focused on the end goal, then you get there, then you're like, all right, well, what's next? And you maybe even remember the journey up until that point. Maybe it
Yep.
took you 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, and it's like, how much did you miss out on because you were just kind of blowing through it, waiting until the end result came?
I couldn't agree more. And I think, one thing that, in my teaching, there's a lot, we do a lot of reflection.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I ask myself continuously is, what is most important? And I think that's a real guiding light, like, that North Star, because I think, that informs us on a lot. What is most important? Well, you know what? I really need to be paying attention to that. Like, that's the most important thing in my life. And that can change. That can change over time. That can change moment to moment. But I think that's a really, like, crucial question to ask ourselves.
Yeah. What's your North Star?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
I like that. I like that concept.
And I think the other piece connect with that is, in mindfulness, there's a lot of intentionality. And, intentionality, it's not about perfection. And it's not saying, like, I'm going to take all these steps to get here, but, we can set our intention each day. We can set it, for a meeting. We can set it when we walk into the home. And the idea of intention, it's, for example, when I do homework with my son, my intention is patience. And guess what? And guess what? I get impatient, right? But it's a
Yeah.
reminder there. And it's a reminder that, oh yeah, wait a second, I might need to step back right now. I might need to walk away for a moment, and then, come back and be patient for my son. But the other part of that too is, what? It's important that I'm patient with myself, because guess what? I overreact at times. And then I become very hard on myself and judgmental and critical. And that's when I have to step back and be like, whoa, dude, you got to be a little more patient with yourself too. Because you know what? You're going to mess up sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So the intentionality is a really important piece.
That's kind of almost like the North Star too, right? I mean, your intention is what
Yep.
you're setting it for. So your North Star at that particular point. Um, would be to stay patient, especially during the homework piece of it. So that's your, that's what's kind of
Yep.
guiding you right there.
Exactly. Exactly. And yep. Good. Sorry.
So I was just going to say, and maybe this is the answer that you were going to give anyway, if I asked this question even before you brought this up, but what's the thing, you had this point in your life that, wasn't very happy for you. It sounded like you were all over the place. And then you had this experience and you had this training. What's one thing that helped you the most? And maybe that's the exact same thing. So I want to know what helped you the most and what you would recommend to someone listening to this. Like, what's the one thing that you would recommend? It's like, if you're going to start here with mindfulness, this is the first thing you got to tackle. This is the first thing you got to do, to kind of bring that mindfulness into your life or into those situations that you're having. So what's some tips there? What's one tip there that you would give to the people listening? But then what's the one thing that helped you out the most? Maybe they're both the same thing.
So I think just this idea of noticing and paying attention. I think for a long time I thought I was paying attention, but I think really I was kind of, for example, like I'd feel that pit in my stomach, and then I would go right to my thoughts. Oh, it's got to be this, or it must be this, right? Or this is what's happening right now, and I would try to get rid of it, or I would try to push it away or avoid it. And I think the first thing is just really paying attention to myself and kind of just allowing myself to be exactly as I am. And when I do that, I don't grasp on to things as much. Um, I, I kind of just allow things to happen as they are. And what I noticed, especially with that pit in my stomach, is it's not there anymore. It really isn't. And when it comes back, I can really just say, you know what? I just feel uneasy in my stomach right now. Instead of attaching with all these negative things and criticisms and what ifs and coulda shouldas. And I think for me, just the paying attention and allowing probably has made one of the biggest impacts on me, with the mindfulness and then my life. And then I think the other part is just the self-compassion, being kind to myself, just treating myself like I treat other people. And so I think it's that combination of like mindfulness and compassion, that has really kind of helped me really enjoy life and just be happy with what I have moment to moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think and I think just and I think the other part is just connectedness, feeling connected with myself, and then just connected with others. Um, I find that to be the most important thing, and I think if I could just give it, a suggestion or advice to people is, find other people that want to spend time with you in this way. Whether it's working out, whether it's a men's group or just mindfulness group. I think just being connected with other people is I think that's one of the most important things we can do, and for me that's made a huge impact in my life.
Okay. So with trying to find people to be connected, you mentioned that you wanted to have that in your life, right? You
Yep.
wanted to find a group of people. So where did you look to? How did you go about that?
So
How did you find those people?
sure. So it's interesting. I was on a retreat, and I was kind of at like a crossroad with one
Was
of
it a
my.
guys retreat, like for men only, or what was
No,
it?
no, it was co-ed, but it was just a great opportunity to kind of step back and do some reflection and connection. And I asked myself, what do I need? That was like a big part that came out of it. Like, what do I need? And one of the things was, this idea of a group of guys. And I thought long and hard about kind of the friends in my life, different guys, different men that I felt connected with. And I kind of like went through it and I've reached out to, friends that I already knew, and then some guys I just connected with recently. And I was like, listen, I want to start a group and just a place where we can come together and be ourselves and be heard and listened to. And, for me, like I sought it out. Like I kind of recruited different guys that, I was connecting with in my life, friends from the past and then new friends as well.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think, if you can find that opportunity, whether you create your own or there are people offering groups where you can come in and spend that time with people, I think it can make the hugest difference. And it can be life-changing too.
No, these online groups, in-person groups, because I know you guys have in-person groups around here. But what about for the guys that, for people that maybe are even listening to this and like, wow, that sounds really, really great. But, you know, are you talking about more online groups too?
We do both. We do in-person stuff, and it's funny. I was always like, I will never do online. It's got to be in person. Like that's what. And
Mm-hmm.
what I realized is, and there can be a lot of connection online as well. So, we do kind of weekly kind of drop-ins. My partner Mark does this thing through Zoom. I do a thing on Facebook Live. And then in addition, both of us have done kind of like and a 2-week challenge where you do a mindfulness practice and connect with the other people that are in the group. That's online as well. And what I would say is, the in-person stuff's really powerful. I lean toward that. I love the online stuff, but the in-person stuff really is, it's just it's a different experience.
Mm-hmm.
So
Cool. So tell people a little bit more about these Facebook Lives that you do.
sure. Um, you can friend me on Facebook, Josh Gansky, and every Monday night at 8:30, I do Facebook Live, and I do a mindfulness practice and reflection at the end. So it's just an opportunity. You can either view it live or you can view it later. It's really just an opportunity for people to just pause and just settle in a little bit and just kind of take a moment to stop.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with our busy days. The other thing I'll share too is my business partner, Mark Balser, Sunday nights, he does a mindfulness, live thing, I think through Zoom. And you can actually go on our website too, which is center for the number 4 selfcare.com. And you can see, when kind of a lot of our online stuff is, and then also a lot of our face-to-face things that are going on.
Okay. So just for people listening, it's Josh and then it's Gansky, Gansky, right? And you said you could friend you on Facebook there to get
Yep.
the information on that. And then if you wanted to look up Mark, MarcBalcer, and then just one more time for the website, it was Center, CENTER, the number 4 selfcare.com. Yeah,
That's correct. Yep.
and this ties in really well with your job, your other job too, right? Because you're a counselor.
That's correct. Yep. I'm a school counselor, and just
So you're helping not only just men and adults and dads here, but you're also then teaching this stuff. Do you incorporate? I'm sure you incorporate this mindfulness with your students.
I do. Definitely. Whether it's like lessons or just the idea of being present for them, which
Mm-hmm.
I think is probably the most important thing we can do for each other. Just really, being there for one another and just kind of showing care by being present. And also the other thing I do, a lot of my work is with educators, because educators need to take care of themselves. A lot of time they are taking care of others, and it's important that their care is a priority too. So it all goes hand in hand.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is awesome, Josh. You're doing some great stuff out there, man. This was great. This was a great conversation.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate it.
Is there anywhere else that people can find out information about you? I mean, you already gave Facebook the website. Anywhere else?
Facebook, centerforselfcare.com. I mean, I think those are the 2 places, and would love love have people come to our events. There'll be a lot going on, in the new year as well. A lot of things in the kind of Upper Marion King of Prussia community, kind of the mainline community, where we have face-to-face stuff going on, and then online things as well. I hope people continue to look at our website and just check things out. And like I said, again, this is really about people taking care of themselves and making that a priority in their lives. And so.
That's awesome. So Josh, as with every episode, I end with 10 questions for the guest, and that these 10 questions are inspired by James Lipton and Bernard Pivot. So just real quick, kind of like a little rapid fire,
Sure.
But here we go. Ready?
Yep.
Number 1, who is your hero?
Oh, wow. My parents.
What excites you?
I think just, being with people, connecting with others. That brings me the greatest happiness and joy.
What turns you off?
People that don't listen.
What is your favorite sound?
The first thing that came to my mind. Fart makes me laugh.
What is your least favorite sound?
Certain people when they're chewing.
Okay. What is your favorite quote or saying?
It's not what you have, it's who you have.
I like that.
And,
in a couple, what's that? Did you want to add?
It's A.A. Milne. He wrote, Winnie the Pooh. So that's his quote.
Okay.
So.
In a couple words, what should a dad be?
Supportive, caring, role model, loving, fun.
Nice. In a couple words, what should a dad not be?
Oh, man. I think not afraid to mess up. I'd say perfect. And I'd say, not afraid to mess up and perfect.
I like that.
Yep.
I like them. If you could try any other profession, what would it be?
Own a food truck.
Nice. What kind of food truck?
What
would it be?
Probably or sauce of some kind, like kind of meatball sausage, all that good stuff.
Nice. And finally, what would you like to be remembered for?
I'd say just a good friend and a good dad and a good husband.
Awesome. Great, man. Well, Josh, thank you once again for coming on the Warrior Dads podcast. I really appreciate you making the time. I love this talk about mindfulness and the tips that you gave for everybody listening. I know I walked away with something, as I do with every interview that I do. So again, thank you for making the time to do this.
Thanks, Jim. I really appreciate it. It's great to spend time with you and talk to you about this stuff. So thanks.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
All right, you too. Take care.
Bye. Hey guys, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Warrior Dads podcast. If you like this podcast and want to support it, please subscribe, leave comments, and share it with someone you think would benefit from listening as well. Thanks again, and keep on being a warrior dad.